So in effect, it's probably worth organisations looking at threat modelling the data itself and the different data fields, because the effects of it to the organisation and to the individual are completely different.
Yeah, and understanding what the threats might be is absolutely key to seeing what could be done with the data and any sort of manipulation. It still takes a lot of creativity in understanding how you could possibly misuse this, as there are some very ingenious ways where you end up with the data being reused, and it gives that knock-on effect.
So what are some of these ingenious ways?
One I saw quite recently, example, in a school situation where I think if I remember it rightly, the account of the principal of the school was attacked by one of the students. The student was able to guess the teacher's password. Shouldn't have been able to do that, but it was relatively easy. Once they had the teacher's password, the teacher was allowed to enrol students onto the class. Instead of enrolling the student, they enrolled the principal of the school into the class. Then, once they'd done that, the teacher was allowed to change the password, reset the passwords of anyone who was a student in the class. So they did that. At that point, they'd reset the principal's password.
Right.
And that's a sort of knock-on effect.
Sure.
Unintended consequences. Each single step of that sounded reasonable in itself, but the whole chain of events could be exploited.
So did you discuss this morning what can be done and what organisations can do to identify these threats?
We covered a number of recommendations. Threat modelling, as we just said, is one of the core items. Understanding what is the important pieces of data that needs the level of integrity. If we can build in systems which actually maintain that level of integrity that's required in the sort of metadata base, so we can see, have the permanent record of what is that most sensitive data, that helps. And that also helps you with the concentration of data protection in the Data Protection Act and the need to track it. So those help on the pure data side, but then having more consistency checking on what is the data, input validation, understanding history of information. Again, many systems out there, it just does an update and doesn't make any record of the previous history. So having version control systems which maintain that record and the logs of what is being done help. Downstream from that, we have to examine what the changes are and looking for suspicious behaviour. A single change is probably unlikely to be of any great significance. A single individual in an organisation making multiple changes to multiple sensitive pieces of data, unless that is a real poor job, is likely to be malicious in some fashion, or certainly worthy of more investigation.
A lot of the things that you've just said sound like very onerous for an organisation, which brings us to the technology to enable you to do this. So are there many technologies around at the moment that can automate all this?
There's certainly technologies there which are possible to look at each stage in the process that I've described. Getting the whole joined up picture is rather harder, and as you say, it can be very expensive if you have to buy a lot of point products. The common off-the-shelf operating systems aren't really designed for maintaining that record of previous changes. One of the examples I gave, which might make it a bit easier in future, is when people see consumer products such as the Apple Time Machine out there, which lets you wind back to previous histories. So it is possible at least to see that data has changed from one point to another. In the meantime, if we don't have any technology of that to understand what it was a day ago, a year ago, then it's a very difficult challenge to even know what data might have been corrupted.
Are there any standards out there that can help people? Because obviously we've got standards for availability in terms of disaster recovery, in terms of business continuity management, and there are guidelines and standards around confidentiality in terms of data loss prevention. Is there anything out there to help with integrity?
Very, very little right now. I mean, you can clearly define your own standards that data should be 99% accurate from the time that it was before, but in terms of expected standards, I don't personally know of anything out there which particularly ones which are related to the business or the value of the data or the cost of correcting the data, and those are some of the core things which are obviously necessary. We haven't even got standards for transferring data between one organisation and another and guaranteeing the level of protection. When it comes down to individual bits of technology, we have standards for checking that data is passed around, but in most cases these are expecting communication errors, so they detect very well a few bits dropped out of a packet, but they won't detect the deliberate changes to the whole of the file. Certainly the idea of good checksums has been around for decades, but is it used in regular transfers? No. HTTP transfers, as we use for our websites, anyone could get in that data stream and modify it, and you'll be none the wiser. In fact, some people are turning that into a business model where you zap out some of the adverts and replace them with someone else's adverts.
Andrew, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.